freeze.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkandstuff.net. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I'm your host, Scott Dr. Jake Skolfine, musicologist and author of Everything is on the One, the First Guide to Funk. If you don't have your copy, get on over to Amazon and pick one up. You'll be so glad you did. Whether you're watching the video version of this at funkandstuff.net or on YouTube, or listening to the audio-only podcast version from providers like iTunes and Spotify, as always, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in the show. Speaking of which, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube. That's where Truth and Rhythm lives. All kinds of goodies. You'll get early premieres, and it's all free, so make sure you sign up. Tell a friend, tell family. Also get your official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff gear at the funkandstuff.net store. Cool stuff like I'm wearing right here. Truth and Rhythm shirts. Show your support and love of the show and also the musicians and the music that they represent. Also want to give a shout out to the Funk Exhibition Center and Hall of Fame in Dayton, Ohio, of which I'm very proud to be an official funk ambassador. Go to thefunkcenter.org to learn more and keep the funk alive. And now, with all that, it's time to get on with the show. Enjoy. I'm delighted to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Command Center PRN Alumni Foundation board member Jacqui Thompson. That organization's initials stand for Prince Rogers Nelson, who our guest worked for as a project facilitator during the mid to late 90s. That included assisting in distribution for MPG Records albums by Chaka Khan and Larry Graham. Founded in 2017, the PRN Foundation is comprised of former Prince and Paisley Park associates with the mission to continue Prince's generosity in supporting opportunities for underprivileged youth to grow in music, technology, arts, and education, as well as help alumni members in need. Jacqui,
Yes.
How are you? So good to have you.
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so you're coming to us from Los Angeles today?
Los Angeles, rainy. Los Angeles. Can you
Okay.
believe it? You remember that, right?
Uh,
No rain. So it's amazing to actually have some. So it's cool.
Well, good. Hopefully it'll keep
Yeah.
those fires at bay.
Yes, please. It's been quite crazy.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining the show, and I look forward to hearing your story as well as that of the foundation.
Sounds good.
So, speaking of you,
Yeah.
where are you from originally, and how did you sort of get involved in music and PR and marketing and that kind of stuff?
Well, I was born in London, England, actually, and I came over when I was 2 to the States. Lived in New York City for a couple of years, and then my brother was conceived, and my parents decided to go back to where my dad's from, and that's Detroit, Michigan area. So I grew up in the Michigan area, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Detroit, which just really creative musically, and my father was a drummer. My brothers played bass, and so I learned to play the drums and just get on, just the love of music. So it started that way. Detroit's a big music place, and so I was exposed to so much music, funk, and my mother's from England, so I got the European, Euro side, David Bowie, and all, just Thompson Twins, whatever. And on my father's side, jazz. A lot of jazz, Chick Corea, a lot of amazing artists. And my own musical journey was more funk-based. And I used to listen to a DJ called Electrifying Mojo. And he had a midnight funk association. And he played so much really cool stuff, George Clinton, and he exposed me to Prince, actually. The first time I ever heard Prince on the radio was because of Electrifying Mojo. And I was young, early teens, so I didn't get to go to the shows. You know, my dad wouldn't let me go and things like that. So and later on I did. I was able to. I know you did mention when we were off camera that you've been to a bunch of shows in LA, so that's really cool. So I didn't get to do that early on, but later, obviously, a whole lot. So from there, I really started to get into being in a band, and I was the one that always put the packages together, and the branding packages and the PR, and I would just go after it. And so I sent a package for our band up to Minneapolis to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. They had a record label called Perspective Records. And I knew it wasn't solicited, so I called and asked the A&R if I could send it. And we hit it off. And she ended up being a female percussionist. And we stayed in touch. Jimmy and Terry liked the band. We had the band up. We drove up for I think it was the Minnesota Black Music Awards at the time. A guy named Pete Rose would do it. And there were panels, and Jimmy Jam and Terry were on the panel, and she said, "Hey, come on up." And that was when I first went to Minneapolis the first time. Got a big bug bitten by Minneapolis. I love Minnesota, and I decided to move there. Ultimately, I played there in a concert and just loved it, and started to network around town with all the band members that ended up actually working with Prince, a lot of them. And I really wanted to make my path more about helping musicians. I knew I had a gift in that, really, that I loved that. I loved putting the packages together. I loved the promotion part of it. I loved the marketing. So I started doing that, and I ended up working for a club in Minneapolis called Biscuits and Blues. And it was Danny Glover and my girlfriend Regina Charbonneau owned it. And she was a famous chef and a Southern chef. And so she had these amazing biscuits, and downstairs were blues acts. So long story short, when I booked Sugar Blue, who was a harmonica blues player, booked Etta James, we booked a bunch of different artists, and I really wanted to have the ability to know everything about music management from the studio to booking. So it was a great experience for me. So Sugar Blue was in town, and Prince came down and watched the show at the club, and then it is leading to something that's pretty cool how lives intersect. But so about 6 months later, I get a call from Mike Scott. He's a really good friend of mine. Had been playing with Prince, playing guitar. Morris Hayes is a friend, and just really, just a great group. So he calls me and says there's an opening for at Paisley doing the merchandise and marketing. And so I ended up, getting ready to prepare for interviewing. And he calls me the day of and says, "Don't worry, you got the job, just come." And so I was like, wow, okay. So I started working there doing the 1-800-NEW-FUNK and staying out of the line of sight of, I was warned, I was already kind of prepped, stay out of his line of his sight so you don't get fired, and it was a running joke. But so I just kind of took advice and just kind of stayed low-key and just went in and worked. And Maite was running that part of that leg of it, and she'd come in. And one day she came in, and I was talking to her, and she looked like a bit frustrated. And I said to her, but mind you, I hadn't ever talked to him yet at that point. It was just Maite. And she said, "Yeah, well, my husband really wants to get in touch with Sugar Blue. But no one knows how to get in touch with him." And I said, "Oh, I've got his number." And she went, Yeah, right. I said, no, I do. I have his number. I have his home number. You want it? And she's like, yeah. And so I went in my, at the time, Rolodex, and got the number and gave it to her. And that's how it kind of started for me with him. I was on his radar now, and it built from there, just more and more. I did the MPG Dance Company with Maite, put that together. There were about 3 shows we did, and then one day he says, "You're on my tour now," and so it just kind of went from there. And then I started running, Paisley obviously were more people there helping, but it was a really small knit group at that point. Warner's wasn't there. We were doing MPG records at that point. It was just myself, Prince, and Londell really did the MPG records, ultimately. And it was just a really amazing kind of build into him trusting me more and more to do more things in that. So sorry about that. Someone just came in. And yeah, so it just was a really good progression for me with him, and that's how it kind of came to be. So,
Wow, that's a great
yeah,
story. Thanks for sharing
thanks.
that.
Yeah, it's cool.
I wanted to throw a few things out there that came to mind as you were talking. One is coming up in Detroit. I recently had Wally Safford on. He was talking about
Ah,
Detroit, and
yeah.
he says hi, by the way.
Tell
And
him hey.
I
That's
mean,
cool.
and it sounds like just such a great place to come up, musically.
It's
I mean, just so
really, really
rich.
amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
It's really, really interesting. Actually, with Wally, I'd been looking to get in touch with Electrifying Mojo. And one day Wally was in, and literally Mojo walks into the place that he was in, and he knew him. And he got his number, and I called Mojo, my like, whoa, he's the one that, you know, really put my funk roots together from all, from Michael Henderson and Roger and Zapp, and that was my basis of my love, Cameo and all that. And so I was like, oh, he's not going to call me back. I left Mojo a message, and that night he called me, and we talked for 2 hours, and we've been friends ever since. We text each other, we talk about music. He's so cool. He's out of doing music now, but he's such a neat guy. So that's funny. You should mention that. So
Yeah, I
about
hear
Wally.
people from that area, and they'll just say
Yeah.
Mojo, you know.
Oh, it was totally. He was so innovative, and he really, I think, helped launch. Well, I know for a fact that he helped launch Prince's career, because there wasn't a whole lot of support back then for him in the sense of the radio. Um, he was too black for white stations. They didn't know what to do with him, and he's too white for black stations. Or like this guy naked on a horse. It's for that they didn't know what to do. So Mojo was very eclectic, very innovative, and very future forward in his what he played, and very authentic with it. Like he didn't just play it because that's what he was, like payola or told to play by the labels. They knew they couldn't do that to him. They knew he had to like the music, and so I think it was it was just magic. And I think Prince really knew that Detroit was a big part of a big fan base. He started the Purple Rain tour off there, 7 nights straight at Cobo Arena.
Mhm.
So, it was definitely a second home as far as he knew where his peeps were. We started the MPG Dance Company in Detroit specifically because I knew people loved, him, and I knew they'd get Maite and the dance company, and it was really successful there. It really did well. And so that was very hard working time for me. Um, it was where I proved myself to him, I think. And then that's when he was like, "You're on my tour," So, and then it grew more and more, work and more, and that I laugh about the AOL chat you talked about when we were offline. AOL chat, I know those well. So, and I remember him doing an AOL chat for Valentine's Day with Maite, and he asked me, Jacqui, can you type? And I could, but I didn't tell him I could because I would be typing all his lyrics and doing all, and I had to focus on business stuff. I had so many hats, I could not be a typist as well. So
Draw the
I
line
lied,
there.
like, I know I'm not gonna tell him that. But I was actually, I could definitely type pretty well. So
What was the name of your band?
it was called Catch 22.
Ah,
So and Yeah, so I mean, it was interesting because Jimmy and Terry they dug it, but I think that they were small. They had mint condition going, and the others they just weren't really signing a lot of bands. They really didn't. They had low key, and that was pretty much what they did. But it was the catalyst for me to be able to get up and really love that city and decide to move and to make my home there.
what
Um,
what year did you move there, Jackie?
I moved in '92, and I started working with Prince in '96. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you worked on the dance thing with Maite, and then you
Yeah.
also were did you do some promotion with her album or?
Well, the Kama Sutra and all that had been already out. It was just part of if I remember right, 1-800 New Funk. I was there for Cristobal. I got dropped into that for the
That was
pre-orders.
yeah,
Yeah, that was an interesting
notorious.
one. Yeah, that's my claim to fame on that one. But I got kind of thrown under the bus on that one, but I still had a job after, so that was good. But yeah, it still was amazing because the innovation of Crystal Ball, selling it online like that, and we sold a whole lot of them. He made a lot of money, and to be able to do it like that is just like so amazing. He saw tomorrow before technology was available. You know what I mean? So if we there wasn't. I mean, when I was there and we were doing the records, there wasn't a Google. There was AOL chat, period. There were no, phones that had, cameras. There was no Facebook. There was, you know what I mean? It's like no Google where I needed, I remember one time he asked me to find the president of Real Audio and get him on the phone. He wanted to talk to him. And he calls me back like 45 minutes, and I'm like, I don't even know what state Real Audio is in. I don't even know the name of and you can't Google it. At the time, it wasn't even around. And so I had to call like 10 or 15 people to find this, and he had called me like 45 minutes later. Did you get the number? And I'm like, no, not yet. I'm still trying to find it. So those are the kind of challenges back then. Technically, we had, but
What was your first interaction with him that was more than just a couple of words, maybe?
let's see. Yeah. So what did he? It's so long ago. I got to think about that. But I do remember. Well, how it. I can say this is that Maite, after the Sugar Blue thing, he got the number, and then I'm on his radar now. So about a week and a half later, Maite comes in. My husband was wondering if he liked my voice for some reason, and I had done the 1-800 New Funk phone line for it, and he asked Maite if I'd mind him sampling it for I think it was Face Down. That was going to be, they were doing some remixes for Face Down. It never came out because EMI folded it before that, but I'm on a Face Down version somewhere in the vault. So it was starting that was the kind of communication that was happening. My husband, was wondering, and then I remember the first time I was walking by, and he's in the kitchen, and he goes, Jackie, and I'm like, he knows my name. Oh my God, that's like. And then he had asked me to do something, so I remember that I was like, I'm on the radar now. So time to take it.
Was he still going by the symbol then?
Yes, he was already there.
So what were you
So,
referring to him as?
sir, I just say
Sir.
sir or nothing, or I just because he would call me, and it would be. he would just start talking. I know it was him. He has such a distinct voice. I know when it was him, except for a couple of the Paisley employees that would like actually could do a really good version of him. That would, there's two people that are the best, and they would, when he was gone, we would, tease each other, or he'd call down and act like he was Prince or something, like buzz in. But in general, I knew who he was. So he really didn't say, "Hey, it's Prince," he'd just start talking. And
Did Maite still call him Prince?
no, my husband.
Even to him?
I don't think she had, no, I don't think she did.
Huh.
I never heard her once.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it was interesting. It didn't really bother me, other than when I got calls at 2 a.m. to change the chyron on BET's "My Name Isn't TAFCAP. I'm not the artist formerly known as Prince. I'm an unpronounceable symbol." Other than those calls, it was easy for me to navigate that with him. It was, it just was kind of natural and not. I was there though when he changed it back. So he calls me in the office and he says, "I want to do a press conference and I'm going to change my name back to Prince." And I looked at him like, oh my God. It just was like, those movies where you're sitting, but then you're envisioning yourself, and I visioned myself, I was jumping over the desk to wring his neck, for all the work I've done with the symbol. And then but I'm still sitting in my body. That's how it felt like. I was just like, ah!
Was that like,
but
was that 98 or 97 or
it had to be 2000.
2000?
Yeah, because he's changed it. Just 99, 2000. Because we had done Rave by that point. Rave, yeah. So it was like 99-ish area. Yeah, when he asked.
Actually, I pulled these out because I know you were there at that time, but I have the three.
I know him well.
They all
Yeah,
came out at the same time, basically.
they did. They did. That was
For viewers that are actually listeners to the audio version of this, I got the Larry Graham, the Shaka Khan, and the MPG albums, and it was a thrill as a fan at that time having that all come out at once.
yeah, it was really neat. And literally, I'm telling you this, we went down to Target. We did a meeting at Target. We did a meeting at Best Buy. And literally, I would call. Target would send a invoice over how many CDs they wanted to order, and I would drop ship to Target. There was no distributor. You're looking at the distributor for MPG during that time for those three. We had definitely challenges like WIA and Sony and those guys. They didn't want it to really succeed. Let's be real. Because if it did, then a lot of other artists would, model that after, which ultimately is the way the music business is today, right? We have direct to fan, you don't need a big distributor anymore. And it was really interesting that, the tech, I was up against a big, powerful industry. And we ended up, selling good amounts. I mean, compared to what industry and what they thought was successful, they always tried to downplay, oh, he's not having success. We were selling lots of records, okay? And he was making a lot of money, and it was his. And so he paid for the manufacturing, and then he got the lion's share of the money. So he didn't have to, sell as much to get, that back. So now, not saying that the record labels are a bad thing. They helped him get to where he was able to do that ultimately in his life and have that kind of control. But at that point for him, it made sense to do it like that. And it was so innovative. And it makes sense when you're already an artist that is established and you've been doing it a long time. You have a fan base. You have your people kind of built in. Why not do that? And so that was always really cool for me to be a part of that. I felt really, a lot of the PRN alumni folks who I talked to, they were there when Warner Brothers, there was a huge staff, there was like wardrobe, I wasn't there during that time. But it was really, to me, really innovative and really interesting, and I'm so glad I got that time. It gets a little bit overshadowed by the 80s, and then he did musicology and all that. but there was some really interesting stuff. I really loved the fifth disc in the Crystal Ball, The Truth.
Truth, yeah.
The acoustic. I really thought that was really neat. I would love to have done a standalone on that, just alone, but that was the bonus on that. So I think people slept a little bit. I think there was a lot of diamonds throughout that period. You just needed, it was hard to get it out there because the industry wasn't letting us get it out there as much as we wanted. Radio stations weren't playing his music. There was definitely a pushback, in that way. So
yeah, I think as innovative as he was musically in the 80s, where he's looked at being from a business perspective, he was in the 90s with all the
yeah,
things that he experimented with.
absolutely. I was so lucky to have that because I take that experience now to what I do now. I also take his fearlessness. He was not he tried it and he did it with his music and even business. And not everything works. Not everything's going to be successful, and you got to be able to realize that, not be afraid of failing, and look at pushing forward. So I've always take that from him, my experience learning from him. The other thing I feel is he really empowered women, and I am so thankful for that opportunity for him to believe in me as a woman and not look at me as a woman, you know what I mean? Like, I can do it, I can be in the board. I remember he asked me to fly in every Wednesday to be there for the meetings with Clive and Arista. And I remember him saying, who is Paisley Park, Jacqui? And I wasn't going to go there, because he's Paisley Park in my mind. I wasn't going to fall for that and say that, me. I know that's what he was trying to get me to say, but I wasn't going to say it. And he kept repeating, no, who's Paisley Park? And I was like, and so he finally said, you represent me. I want you there in New York every Wednesday for those meetings and come back and report and tell me and be a representative of Paisley Park. And I did, and I really appreciated that. It really, not a lot of guys do that. I mean, seriously, in that way, he didn't need to, but he believed in me and that I could do it. So I've always kept that, and I've always appreciated that about him. He wasn't always the easiest guy to work for. He was tough and demanding and time-consuming and energy-draining and all that, but it was so worth it for me. I learned so much, and I appreciate it and thank him for that opportunity.
Why do you think that Rave Project didn't get to where he had hoped?
Well, I think because I don't think Clive did what Arista normally does with artists. Like, they have their routine set. They know how to, they have it set in the system. When Prince came on, that system kind of we were late on getting the video to them. There are components that weren't on time, in a sense, even though it wasn't set that way. I think that Clive, if it had been other artists, Clive would have said, hey, this is what we're doing and this is how we're rolling it out. I think with Prince, he wasn't going to do that. And I think Prince was looking for that, personally. I think he wanted Clive to do that. It's just an interesting time in music. Things were changing. The magic it was kind of, to me, like supernatural, with that kind of concept.
Santana.
With Santana. And I think they were trying to light that fire again in that way. But, supernatural is supernatural in its own way, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I think there are a lot of cool tracks on Rave. I think I wouldn't have chose Greatest Romance as the first single. I think that was not the right move. I think another song should have come first, and then maybe Greatest Romance. That would have been what I would have liked to have seen. I think that could be the singles back then, especially, were if you don't choose that right, it can be detrimental to the whole album. And these days, you can pop out a single, and it's single driven, single, digital. Um, but back then, it was really set up, and if you needed to have that right song, just didn't think that was the right one for that particular. But it still did. I think it went.
I think it went gold.
Yeah, it did, definitely. I got
Yeah.
a plaque from it, a gold plaque
And
from
then
it.
he put out the alternate version a little while later.
Yeah,
The first was Unto, and then it was Into, or
Into,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And then we did the,
Beautiful Strange was on there.
yes, well, I did that, Beautiful Strange, actually.
That's a great track.
The actual video, not the song. I didn't do the song. He did
The
that.
video's good too.
Yeah, the video, Beautiful Strange. And we did, I started growing with him in the sense of he pushed you differently than you thought. Like you try things that, like, hey, do you type? And I was like, no, I don't type. But we started doing cutting concerts and videos together just by he just pushed you, like, we did. So I came up with a concept with a PR and a few people to do this thing called at Café de Paris in England with Channel 4. So it was he was the first artist to ever have a full day of programming in England on Channel 4. So they played all his music videos, they played a couple of his movies, and then it culminated with this show we did at Café de Paris. And we shot it there in London. It was absolutely amazing. It's like, supernatural in that way. It's just like everything just hit just perfectly. It was a 12 camera shoot. And we were done with it. Did 3 shows in London or England. I think we did Brixton, Wembley, and then we did Café de Paris. And we shot that, and I remember he said, well, I want you to fly the masters and go to California, find an editing bay, and we're going to start cutting it, and I'll be there. So I said, okay. So I found an editing bay in Hollywood, Beverly Hills area, and flew there and put it up, got it, ready for him when he was, ready to go. And he calls me from, I don't know, he's over in Spain or something, and he calls me and says, I just need a little time, from the tour. You start cutting it. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Me start cutting it? And I was just like, okay. And so luckily I have creativeness in me, and I have the drumming, and I know timing, and I understand visuals enough. And so literally I started cutting that thing. And so 2 days later he flies in, and I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous, like, oh God, he's gonna, And so he goes, he sits with the editor. I'm back there. I'm just like inside, just dying, like, oh. The guy who did Purple Rain is gonna look at my cut. Oh my God! So he has the editor play it, and he's quiet, and he's just looking at it, and he starts just roll that back. It's like 2 frames off. He's really amazing like that. He know when the sync was 2 frames off, or go 5 frames back or forward or whatever. And then I realized he's just cutting it, and he doesn't hate it. He's just getting into it. So from that point on, he started having me in the editing bays with him. It was really crazy. So we did while I was on tour, he had me go out and shoot all this crazy B-roll stuff, just random B-roll, fun stuff. We did Hyde Park, where he was an old man, and he didn't even tell us he was going to be an old man. He just pulls up in a limo, and he's ready to go, and he's got his disguise on, and we shoot him. And so it ends up being Come On, the video of Come On. So him and we just take this random footage that we had done B-roll on tour along with this, and cut this, and it's supposed to be silly and fun and just quirky and whatever. So that was, him and I did it alone in this fire suite. And so that ended up the Café de Paris and Beautiful Strange with Mel B's interview. We put that into a VHS. and created the Beautiful Strange VHS at the time. VHS, oh my God. It's amazing how far it's come. I just still, when I talk about it, I'm just like, wow. But that was something that led, actually, when I left working for him, I ended up doing EPK. So Arista sent an EPK to him for Rave. He calls me in the office and says, come into Studio A, I want you to look at the EPK and tell me what you think. So I go into the studio and I watch it, and it wasn't like the best. So I said, I'm not really feeling it. He says, I don't either. Tell him, you're doing it, and, call him back and tell him you're doing it, redoing it, and send the stuff. So I had to call Arista up and get all the footage, and then I went and I cut it. And so they really liked it. And I ended up getting hired later by Arista to do EPKs. I did Stankonia with Outkast. I did Funk Master Flex. I did a EPK for Shaka Khan after that. So it was really an interesting path, of that. So anyway, pretty cool. Yeah.
But Beautiful Strange was, I mean, when I first saw it, it was just blown away because, I mean, the music was great. It had a song never heard before, and
Yeah.
also to see Prince that disarmed, to
Yeah.
be with
Right.
her, it
It
was
was
like,
so cute. They were really cute together.
yeah.
They really were. I was there for that. And, when it was shot, I mean, they were just honestly really just natural. They just liked each other. It was really they were sweet, and the interview was really cool. So it was just nice day for that. So that was really cool. And we just incorporated. So everything that he did, even when he, because that was for a VH1 special originally, that was shot by VH1. But everything he did, he owned. So even though, there was VH1, they didn't own it. So we could use it later. So that's what we did. So that was pretty cool.
Were you involved also with that one? I forgot the name of it. That had Dougie Fresh in it, and Larry Graham, and Chaka Khan, and him.
Yeah, on live.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Café de Paris.
Oh,
So
that was. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was that. So that was a place in London, and we found a really cool club. It had a upstairs and down, but it was small. It was 500 seater. So we had all the fans on the bottom and some of the VIP on top, and then we had Channel 4 had a 12 camera shoot around it, and that was with Shaka Khan and Larry Graham and Dougie Fresh and all that. That was that
Well, they
shoot.
called it something
Yeah.
else when they released it, which I can't remember. It wasn't.
Well, it was a secret gig. The secret gig.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That we was a secret gig. No one knew about it until like literally hours before.
There was
We
only
had
like
it
what 100 or 200 people maybe.
200 below, and then we had VIP up top. So there was probably around 400 people.
Hmm.
Totally. Yeah, it's a small club, but it was really it was a lot of fun. And yeah, we call it the secret gig. And then that became part of the bundle basically on the VH1 with Beautiful Strange and that.
And you also
Yeah.
were involved in the 1999 concert
Yeah.
show, which that was a
Yeah.
live broadcast, right? Originally.
No, it was not.
Or well,
So
they aired it like it was a live.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, they did. Oh, yeah. We did that in November, and uh, it was amazing. I still have the metal. I had metal tickets made. There's only I forgot only 500 people, and it was really cool. We had Lenny Kravitz, George Clinton, um, Johnny Lang. Who else? Gosh,
Morris Day and the Time.
yeah, Time, Maceo Parker, all that. So it was really really cool, and yeah, I helped put that together, and then it was. If you got time, I'll tell you the story about this. It's actually pretty cool. So and crazy. So literally, it's a pay-per-view, right? And it was all satellites at the time. So it's the upload. They need at least a day to 2 days to upload to all the satellites back then. And so we had to deliver. We were editing. We literally edited at Paisley Park at that point with the director, myself, and Prince. And I know that footage back and forth. It was crazy. So we were literally. So they're calling. I had to be the actual master had to be in their hands by 8 a.m. That next morning in New York. So we're literally editing still and putting in the credits and all that, right? And I'm getting calls from them like panicky, and I say, I've got my Northwest flight coming in, don't worry, I'll be there, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, but we have to have it. There's no way, this is like satellite, we have to have it. I said, no worries. So I'm going, oh my God, I don't know if we're going to have it. So Prince comes to me and says, how much would it cost to do a private jet, there? And I still had my Northwest flight booked. So I went and I researched, got that pricing, and I came back, I told him, and he's like, okay. And so as it got closer, he says, book it. And so I booked the private jet, and literally grabbed the tape. I had a car waiting for me. I ran, zipped to the private jet, got on the private jet, ended up, it was 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm in mid-Manhattan traffic. I literally get to their office at like 7:57, here you go, like I'm doing that. It was absolutely crazy, but we pulled it off. But boy, but those were so much fun. At the time, I'm stressed out of my mind, but looking back, I always find that I just giggle and laugh at that. It's just like so cool.
Was there much other stuff that wasn't in what was put together? Much other performance?
There was some, all the performances were in there. It just was edited, and trimmed. It's been a while, so it's hard for me to, when I see it, I go, oh yeah, I remember that move.
Wasn't there like a zip line or something, like Morris Day or somebody came in, like?
Yeah, there was a few things, it was a long day. That's all I got to say. Long couple weeks leading up to it. So he didn't want to play on New Year's Eve. So we did it like it was New Year's Eve, the balls coming down, you know what I mean, but the balloons. And so we fake New Year's Eve in event, there. And I remember I get a call from him, and he's like, you were going to come watch the show. It's New Year's Eve, mind you. I'm like ready to go out with family and friends and go party and celebrate. And I end up out at Paisley Park with him and watching the show I just cut over and over and over. Know it back. I'm just like, oh my God, why am I here? Like, I should be out like popping champagne right now. And then, but that was how I felt at the time. In retrospect, oh my God, to have that opportunity to watch that show with him, kicking in the new millennial, is like pretty. Not a whole lot of people can say they did that. So, but at the time, I was not happy. I was like, why? I just saw this like over and over and over. I know this show, man. It's like, oh man, but he was proud of it, and it was a fun. And when I look back now, and I go, oh, that was fun. That was good.